Welcome to part 20 of our lecture on the axial skeleton. Don't panic, it's not part 20. You did not miss parts, it just feels like it. I've done 20 of these already. So, we are going to look at the vertebral column. We are going to contrast the anterior and posterior curvatures. We'll explain the differences between something like this, which is the atlas, and something like this, which is a lumbar vertebrae. We will talk about common parts, so they all are going to, or most of them, you are a oddball, most of them are going to have a body, a transverse process, a spinous process. So we'll talk about the structures they all have, and then we'll look at unique structures as why do I know that is a lumbar vertebrae where I know this is a thoracic vertebrae. So how the heck do I know that? Just by looking at the two. And you'll have to identify them in the lab exam, which is which. So, your vertebral column, you need to know how many of each vertebrae you have. I'm not that big on the number of skull bones, but this is important. It's important for when we do the nerves. So, the adult vertebral column is 26 bones. The sacrum starts out existence as 5. In most people, it fuses. The coccyx, this is the fun one. This is why I'm not big on bone numbers. It starts out as anywhere from 3 to 5 bones, and it generally fuses as well. Now, the rest of them are named for where they are. Actually, the sacrum is too. There are 7 cervical ones. So where's your cervical region? That's right, your neck. So the 7 cervical ones are in your neck, and this is the lateral view you're looking at from the side. You have an anterior curvature, so this is curving to the front. Now, these first 7 are anterior, and you have to know 7 cervical. By the way, if you have to get up to go to work, do you get up? I used to wake up around 7 and have breakfast. Now, the thoracic one is your thoracic region, and there are 12 thoracic vertebrae. And when I used to have to actually go to work, I would have lunch at about 12. I'm not going to say when I get up now and when I have lunch and breakfast now, by the way. Now, this curvature is going to go posterior. So see how the curve is going to the back, or this curve is going to the front. Now, your lumbar. Here is your curvature going to the front. And there's only 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be an anterior curvature. Then your coccyx sacrum, is going to have a posterior curvature. It goes to the back. And then you have your coccyx, which technically goes like that. So, if you had a normal life, you wake up in the morning, you have breakfast at 7, you have lunch at noon, then I would always be starving by 5, so I'd have dinner at 5. Now, the fun thing is you could be a hobbit and you could add the 5 plus 3 or 5 plus 5 and have your second dinner at either 8 or 10. We're not going to do that part of the story, though. So you need to know 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar. They're named for where they are. Neck, upper trunk, lower back. So, as I was mentioning, this curve, it goes to the front. So that is the anterior curvature. This curve goes to the back, so that would be a posterior curvature. This curve goes to the front for the lumbar, so it's an anterior curvature. Sacrum goes to the back, so it would be a posterior curvature. So you have to know which region has which curvature. I'm not going to mention the coccyx. Coccyx are weird. So cervical curvature is anterior. Thoracic is posterior. Lumbar is anterior. It's nice. It alternates anterior, posterior, anterior, posterior. So I'll ask you the number of vertebrae, 7, 12, 5, and their curvatures. So, our typical vertebrae. So, I have 2 typical vertebrae right here. This is Bob, this is Charlie. No, this is a thoracic vertebrae, this is a lumbar vertebrae. Now, you'll notice they both have these pointy processes sticking to the back. So, this is posterior where my fingers are back here. These are called spinous processes. So if you go to somebody you love, significant other, cat, dog, doesn't matter, and just run your hand down the center of their spine, you can feel these spinous processes. Now, these processes are dividing in a transverse plane. They are doing a top side and a bottom side. Top side, bottom side. So these are called transverse. So my fingers are on the transverse. Now here, they both have big bodies. So that would be the body. So I'm going to turn it sideways. So, body. This is the transverse process because it separates top and bottom. This back here is the spinous process. Now, this, I've set it up so that there is a superior on this side and an inferior. So this process is articulating with the next vertebrae. So this process here is articulating with the next vertebrae. This does not go together like this, by the way. So this would be the superior articulating process. So this is the superior articulating process. So I have my two vertebrae here. So see the superior articulating process? This one sits on top of it like so. So this is superior articulating process. Now what articulates with it underneath, this one right there, would be the inferior articulating process. So see how they come together, superior, inferior, they come together. And there would be a intervertebral disc in between it. So it sort of goes together like this. So we could see the inferior and the posterior. This actually is not the disc that goes between them. I did not want to dump out the discs and go through 32 of them. So that is the disc between the two. So we have a foramen here. That is between vertebrae. So this is the intervertebral foramen. And you have spinal nerves that come out. So it's actually very important. And if I were to remove this disc, crunch, I have a smashed spinal nerve. So this happens a lot in the lumbar region, basically due to how people stand all the time or have their postures. The disc, which actually has some jelly in the center, gets out of line and it shifts and they smash their poor spinal nerves, usually the ones that become the sciatic nerve. So then if I look from the superior, I have another hole. This hole is the vertebral foramen because the spinal column goes here. So our landmarks. Here is our typical vertebrate. His name is Bob. Body, superior articulating process because it's on the top. Inferior articulating process, which is on the bottom. We have our transverse process there. We have our spinous process sticking to the posterior. We have our vertebral foramen there. And if I put the inferior articulating process together with this one, I have, and I guess I will put my incorrect disc there, I have my intervertebral foramen in between the two. So that is the landmarks that all vertebrae allegedly have. So this is our body. All vertebrae except the atlas has a body. This is the transverse process. All vertebrae except for CO234 and if possible 5 have transverse processes. This is the spinous process. All vertebrae except for the lower coccyx ones had a spinous process. This is the vertebral foramen right there. This is the superior articulating facet right there. Now, this is the arch. I couldn't really show you the arch very well on that one. I guess I could show you with Mr. Atlas. So this would be the arch. Now, the arch is made up of the pedicule and the lamina. The pedicule is right there, means foot. Laminal means layer. I've never really tested on the parts of the arch because unless I have a whale vertebrae, which is against the Marine Mammal Act if it was found after 1973, I can't show it to you. So this is just too hard. By the way, yes, I do have access to a whale vertebrae that was found in the 1940s, but I don't have it with me. So those are the parts of a typical vertebrae. Now, this is the lateral view. So this lateral view, we could see the intervertebral foramen right there. And we could see the superior articulating facet and the inferior articulating facet or process. The facet is on the process right there. Now, how the heck do you know the superior and the inferior? So right here, we have our vertebrae. The spinous process faces inferior. So I told you I do have access. It is my grandfather's doorstop. He found it in the 1940s on a beach. So my grandfather's doorstop basically sat like this my entire life. So I thought this was up or superior. Then I get to my first anatomy class and they're like, no, it goes like this. So the spinous process goes down, even though that does make a really cool looking doorstop, and it led to all sorts of conversations. And again, my grandfather found this thing in the 1940s. So we talked about the numbers. There are 7 cervical vertebrae. C1 is named the Atlas. The Atlas was the Titan who held up the sky, not the earth like the pictures. Those were all Renaissance paintings and statues. He held up the sky. So it lacks a body. So if I grab my Atlas right here, it ain't got no body, like you. Okay, I won't sing. I'll stick to my day job. Now, what happened to the body? Who kidnapped the body? Axis. This is the axis. It is C2. If you see here, there is a process. Its technical name is odontoid process. I've asked students for the last 15 years. They want to call it its other's name. It's called the dens. Apparently, they prefer the dens a lot more. So this is the dens right there. The dens is going to stick up into where the body of the Atlas, and it lets you shake your head no. So here is the Atlas and the axis. Anterior is now this way. And we could see there ain't no body here. Oh, Mr. Axis stole the body. That's what happened. Now, what's going to happen is I'm going to put them together. And I could shake my head. No more! This is part 75. No more. So this forms a pivot joint. It lets you shake your head no. Now notice, the superior articulating facets are humongous. Remember what the occipital bone has? It has a pair of condyles. The condyles fit nicely into this one. So when I grabbed this bone, I had it like this. I'm like, that looks wrong. Oh, because the condyles fit into there, this superior articulating facet fits nicely in there. So it goes together sort of like that. So the dens is where the body would be. And then these superior articulating facets are going to articulate with the occipital bone. So, and there's 7 of them. C1 is Atlas, C2 is Axis, C3 through C7, they don't get special names. Don't worry, C7, I like you, you're special. It actually is. See how the spinous process is different. Now, the typical vertebrate, that is cervical, has a very large vertebral foramen. Your spinal cord is very large there because it has all the wiring leaving the brain and has a very small body. It only has to hold up the weight of your head. And again, axis lacks a body. It has a very short transverse process. And if I really wanted to torture you or torment you, I'd actually teach you the 2 parts of it. But this is the transverse process right there. And look, it has a hole. What are holes called? It has foramen. So this is a transverse foramen. So if I pop this up, my nice large hole right there is a transverse foramen. So the cervical vertebrae, small body, large vertebral foramen, and a transverse foramen. Now their spinous process, it is called bifucal. It's split and it's also very small. So on the test, I'll ask what is special about the cervical vertebrae. So we'll continue with the transverse in our next video. Thank you.